This week on The Record, funding fight at City Hall. The tug of war over a slice of the city's share of Rams settlement funds heats up as the Board of Aldermen push a compromise plan. Why teachers' unions are skeptical of a push to expand private early childhood education. Plus, the renewed Republican push for a state takeover of the city police department, what Mayor Jones told lawmakers in Jefferson City. But first, a second term for Donald Trump.
The golden age of America begins right now.
Swift executive actions from a president intent on fulfilling campaign promises and backlash some of those orders already face from Democratic leaders across the country. It's all coming up right now. Welcome to The Record. I'm Mark Maxwell. Donald Trump returned to the White House this week after he was sworn in as the 47th President of the United States. His inaugural address slammed the previous administration.
My recent election is a mandate to completely and totally reverse a horrible betrayal and all of these many betrayals that have taken place, and to give the people back their faith, their wealth, their democracy, and indeed their freedom. From this moment on, America's decline is over.
Hours after returning to the White House, the president issued several executive orders. One challenges the long-standing interpretation of the Constitution's 14th Amendment, which states anyone born in the U.S. is an American citizen.
It's a challenging day for Americans across this country as a result of what's happening in Washington, D.C. right now. We have already heard that one of the executive orders that's going to be issued is a rescinding of birthright citizenship. I want to be clear with all of you, that's unconstitutional, and we will not follow an unconstitutional order.
That was Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker on Tuesday. On Thursday, a federal judge temporarily blocked the president's order, saying it boggles the mind. Illinois was one of 4 states to file that successful challenge. And according to the court record, undocumented moms gave birth to 250,000 Americans in 2022. Nearly 10,000 of those mothers and their children were born in Illinois. The lawsuit says thousands of newborn babies will be stripped of their U.S. citizenship, will be rendered undocumented, subject to removal or detention. Many will become stateless. The lawsuit goes on to say they will lose their ability to obtain a Social Security number and to work lawfully. They would lose a right to vote, serve on juries, and run for certain offices. Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul is now on the record. And Attorney General, it's good to have you with us. We're reading some of the impact that you've described in this lawsuit. What would be the immediate impact of this executive order if it were allowed to stand?
We rely on citizen birth information for what is the Department of Public Health, Healthcare and Family Services, or various departments. And so, we've been accustomed to the 14th Amendment, Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, meaning what it says for some time now. And our government, just like other government and our citizenry, has relied on that plain language for the administration of responsibilities to our respective citizens.
Did I read correctly that you and some of the other attorneys general involved here have American citizenship by birthright?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, and the executive order tries to define it in a certain way, but my mother was not yet a citizen at the time of my birth. My father, I believe, had been naturalized at the time of birth. Both of my parents were Haitian immigrants.
This only applies to people going forward 30 days after it was signed, and the courts have intervened already, but people in your position from this point going forward would no longer have that citizenship if this were allowed to stand. If we set this immigration issue aside for a moment and just look at the lawful exercise of executive power, on other issues, you have vigorously defended executive powers in an emergency, even over that of the legislature or of the courts. Do you consider the influx of newly arriving migrants an emergency, or do you acknowledge that the executive branch has the power to declare something like that an emergency?
The executive branch certainly has the power to respond to emergencies or even non-emergencies, and to there's limited action the executive branch can take through executive order. But it's important to note one of those things is not violating our Constitution, the plain language of our Constitution, whether in this case with regards to birthright citizenship is violative of the 14th Amendment, or with regards to the DOJ memo that was issued, the suggestion of commandeering state and local officials to do federal responsibility. Our Supreme Court has ruled twice already that's violative of our 10th Amendment.
And for our St. Louis viewers, of course, the 14th Amendment rooted in St. Louis history. The Dred and Harriet Scott decision argued at the Supreme Court, first filed at a federal courthouse right down the street from our studios here now. I want to ask you, shifting gears here a little bit, about how local and state law enforcement might go about partnering up with, or how they're going to handle orders from federal law enforcement. We know that President Trump's administration has suggested local law enforcement should assist them in deporting undocumented migrants that are here without their proper paperwork. But you've just issued some guidance that says Illinois laws govern law enforcement interactions with immigrant communities, and says, quote, law enforcement agencies in Illinois are largely prohibited from participating in immigration enforcement. What's the reason for putting out this guidance now? Is there anything changing in the way you're putting forth these rules as they apply to the Illinois Trust Act?
We put out the guidance before, so this isn't just now happening, but we're making it available. We have heard from various law enforcement departments, and want to make it clear. And then one of the things I want to make clear is that even my office collaborates with federal law enforcement agencies, including Homeland Security investigations on criminal investigations. That nothing in the Trust Act prevents that collaboration. So it's important to note that there's nothing in the Trust Act or our guidance that suggests that we don't collaborate with criminal investigations. We do so on human trafficking, on drug trafficking, on organized retail crime, gun trafficking, and other matters, whether they involve non-citizens or citizens.
When is it appropriate for local or state law enforcement to collaborate with federal officials on immigration in particular? For example, I'm reading here from your guidance where it says a local law enforcement agency in Illinois cannot give an immigration agent access to individuals in its custody. But if they're in police custody, aren't they already suspected of a crime?
They may be suspected of a crime, and quite frankly, the federal law enforcement would have access to knowing that they're in custody. There are websites that even lay people can look up names and find out that they're in custody. So it doesn't require any collaboration on that front. But if there's a criminal investigation, if there's a criminal subpoena or something of that nature, law enforcement can and should collaborate. What law enforcement should not do is partake in civil enforcement of immigration. Our federal government has given that duty to Homeland Security through ICE. And it's their job. It's the job of local law enforcement to focus on enforcing the criminal laws of the state of Illinois.
We'd love to have you back again in the future. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
A lot more of that conversation with Attorney General Kwame Raoul, including his take on DEI in corporate America, up on KSDK.com, including a new push from Indiana to welcome Illinois counties that want to leave Illinois. Another lawmaker just joining us last week. And tune into 5 Plus Monday night for an expanded version of this episode. A renewed push for St. Louis police to be under state control. Mayor Jones and Chief Tracy testifying at the Missouri Capitol, advocating against that idea. Missouri Republicans are renewing their ongoing push to strip St. Louis of local control of its police department. Mayor Tashara Jones and Police Chief Robert Tracy traveled to the state capitol this week to testify against that idea. Lawmakers discussed the reasons why St. Louis crime trends are concerning, while St. Louis leaders point that crime is trending down. State Senator Nick Schroer says perhaps police reports couldn't be trusted.
You'll hear today that over the last year, crime statistics in the city of St. Louis are on the decline, and therefore, this bill isn't necessary. The truth is, the reliability of those crime statistics has come under massive federal and state scrutiny.
This legislation is not about public safety. If it were, I would expect a clear and compelling answer to this question. Why will state control make St. Louis safer?
There was no coherent answer to that question. Kansas City Democrats asked over and over again, if a state board works so well, why is crime rising there while it's declining here in St. Louis? Republicans are still pushing forward with this plan, but in other news, Missouri abortion rights supporters also gathered at the Capitol this week, rallying in defense of Amendment 3, which voters approved in the fall. It legalized abortion access, but still no clinic in Missouri holds a license to perform the procedure. Advocates are calling on lawmakers to support the will of the voters. Multiple anti-abortion bills have been filed in Missouri. When we come back, the latest debate brewing over how to spend the Rams settlement money in St. Louis. As city leaders continue the debate over how to spend the Rams settlement money, a pair of proposals could spend up to 10% or more of that money funding early childhood education. A compromise plan, now advancing its way through City Hall, would spend $30 to $34 million to launch a pilot program helping to pay for part of a city worker's child care costs. Other community providers could also tap into those funds if they help to train new child care workers. The Board of Aldermen could potentially expand that program at some point to other parents who are not city workers. Joining us now is Charlie Cooksey with We Power and Byron Clemens, the spokesperson with the American Federation of Teachers, St. Louis 420. It's good to have you both with us. Byron, I would like to start with you if I can. What is the current need? What is the current capacity in the city to provide child care for early age children, and what is the need to expand?
Well, there is pre-K in the St. Louis public schools with a state-approved curriculum and certified teachers, and that's tuition-free in all the elementary schools in the city of St. Louis. And that's pre-K, it's not daycare per se. There is a need for daycare. We're just not sure We Power Opportunity Trust should have anything to do with it.
He name-checked you there. We Power is your organization. Would you like to just address that first part? He's putting you in league with Opportunity Trust. I know you've suggested that, well, how do you explain your relationship with that group?
Sure. I don't understand why you keep referencing Opportunity Trust. We Power is completely independent. We do not have a relationship with Opportunity Trust, and we are focused on early childhood.
And as in the focus, we saw in the survey that the city Board of Aldermen put out that child care and expanding child care ranked very high across the city. What was We Power's role in building community support or in influencing the outcome of that survey?
Yeah, we simply went to residents across the region and asked them to take the survey. And they voted, and the voting showed that early childhood is a top priority for Black residents and for low-income households, and top 4 priority among all the folks that engage in the voting process.
At the start of this debate, there were 2 rival bills, and the one backed by the business community, the big lobbying powerhouse, Greater St. Louis Inc., did not have any funding for early childhood. Now they are supporting it. What does it mean to have the business community backing this idea?
I believe it's a smart decision on behalf of the business community. They are working to grow our economy. You cannot grow our economy without investing in early childhood.
As we mentioned off the top, part of this money could go to help train new child care workers. And Byron, if I understand, some St. Louis public school teachers could do that training, and they could also tap into some of this funding. Is that a positive?
That's an offer that's on the table. It was mentioned in the Board of Aldermen as a proposal that we would be glad to partner with child care providers, with certified teachers, with state-approved curriculum. And I think that's a worthy project to consider. But we are concerned about We Power Opportunity Trust and their outsized influence in this whole process. They have paid, quote, volunteers who drove that whole petitioning process and took part in the surveys that were put up in a portal, kind of doing an end around from the Board of Aldermen. And we didn't support that. But we were in support of Board Bill 131, the pure bill that was up, and still do.
I want to put a pin in this. We'll come back to that in just a minute if I can. I can sense that there's some tension in the funding and the fight of how the early childhood model goes forward in St. Louis. Is it appropriate for people other than St. Louis Public Schools to also lift part of the burden? If it takes a village, should there be other providers, private care providers that help offer early childhood?
Absolutely, there should be.
And To the comments he just made, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, it sounds like we're more on the same page than I realized. However, Board Bill 131 had no support for education. I think we both believe that we need to invest in education. So Board Bill 153 has nothing to do with We Power benefiting financially, has nothing to do with Opportunity Trust benefiting financially. Also, I would love for you to quit combining We Power and the Opportunity Trust, because we are two separate entities that have two different agendas and they are not the same.
Is it fair to say that there's some suspicion that maybe kids would go to an early childhood education provider that is private and not affiliated with a teachers union, and then from there they might matriculate up into a charter school? Is that part of the concern the teachers union has?
It is our concern. We Power Opportunity Trust constantly lobbies in Jefferson City for so-called school choice.
We Power has never
and the
lobbied
millionaires,
for school choice. That is inaccurate. You need to quit telling things that are not
and
accurate.
the millionaires who back this whole thing have hundreds of millions of dollars. They could fund daycare on their own. They don't need to feed at the public trough.
Does We Power have a position on the unionization of the early childhood workforce?
We are pro-union. We would love for the child care community to get unionized. We have never been against that idea, and we have never advocated for school choice or charter schools ever at the local or state level. And if there's evidence that proves that wrong, please direct me to it and I will take ownership. But it is unfair for you to continue to say things that are not accurate or publicly documented.
All right, Byron Clemens and Charlie Cooksey, two passionate advocates fighting in the education space, albeit in different corners of this particular conversation. Thank you both for joining us. You can see a bit of the flavor of the debate that is roiling in City Hall right now, but perhaps we can hear from more of you in the days and weeks to come as this Rams money and its plan comes together. We're back in a moment. Welcome back. Before we go, we have to correct the record. From time to time, we hear politicians say things that aren't quite right. Sometimes they're flat out wrong. And when they say it on the public record, I just get this urge to correct it, especially when they're talking about us.
ASDK has now left the city of St. Louis, citing safety reasons for their employees.
No, we haven't. As you can see, our station is still located in downtown St. Louis. And while you might have seen recent news reports that, yes, our management is considering a move out of this massive space built many years ago into a more modern space with attached parking, we haven't done it yet. And if we do, our station management tells us we have no plans to leave the city of St. Louis itself. And look, while a lot of factors go into any company making a decision to move, I can promise you, no one at our company stopped to ponder whether we might stay in this building if only we just had 4 more police commissioners. That's what this big political fight was all about this week in Jefferson City. Republicans renewing their push to take control of the city's police department away from the mayor and diminish the voice of the voters who elect the mayor. Only one other city in Missouri has a state-appointed board of commissioners that controls its department. That's Kansas City, and crime there has been going up lately. Crime here has been going down. That's if you believe the police are telling us the truth. And get this, House Republican Brad Crist, who's pushing this plan in the House, apparently doesn't believe the police reports. He, too, cited this TV station as he made his case that those crime stats can't be trusted.
I just want to know that, yeah, because you're saying all these statistics, but you don't believe the ones that this administration, I'm assuming,
the police
is bringing
department has them. They used to be the gold standard in issuing these crime data, and that shifted a few years ago. They just put out their crime data. KSDK asked them for that crime data, and they wanted to charge them $14,000 to get the crime data through a Sunshine request.
Hold up. I'm the guy who filed that Sunshine request he referred to. It had nothing to do with crime data. Instead, we wanted to see about internal emails, about specific incidents of crime downtown from a very narrow date range over the summer. And yes, the price tag, that part is true. The city initially stonewalled our efforts, but the mayor's office tells us they're now working to get us those records at a much lower price. What a bargain. But the representative's attempts to discredit police data, it was all based on bad information. Now, to be fair to Representative Crist, Mayor Jones herself, when I asked her recently, why are they charging us so much? She too, at least at first, seemed to think maybe I was asking her about crime stats. I wasn't. And our request for open records also was not. We just wanted to see how they talk about crime behind closed doors. And maybe eventually we'll get those answers. Then they too can be part of the record. Hope that clears it all up. Anyway, that's all of our time. But you can catch more political news on the 5 Plus app. We'll be back here at the same time next week. Until then, we're off the record.